Hey guys, this is JSer. How's everything going? In the previous video, I list up some of the steps about how to approach to the system design of front-end position, front-end interview. So in this video, I'm going to try the steps with a real example. I searched on YouTube and found someone talked about progress bar, which is a system design problem. I'm not sure whether this is from Facebook or from Google anything. I would just think that it might be a good start to practice the real guideline, right? And the uploader said that it was a simple questions, and I watched the video, and it was very simple, but it's simple because the spec is simple, right? But for real system design, I don't think that is a good, a good approach to implement a progress bar. We should make it a little more complicated to show the interviewer our abilities, right? Okay, so let's begin. So we're going to design a progress bar. Let's follow the steps I mentioned in the previous video. If you haven't seen that video, watch that video, please search on my channel. There will be a video called Facebook system design interview front end blah blah blah. Okay, I made these 6 steps as approach to our problem. 1, understand what it is. Okay, let's begin. So what it is? There's a lot of progress bar in web applications. Upload, you upload the file, there will be a progress bar. There's download, a progress bar. There are some processes, there's a progress bar. Or we are going to implement a progress bar that is used for to monitor the API calls. I suppose the last one is our goal, right? So a progress bar. Let's design a progress bar that monitors API calls, right? So show the bar when there is ongoing API calls. So this is a basic idea, right? So the interviewer should be on the same page with us, and then we decide the scope that how this would what in what details we're gonna implement. Great. So okay. For this part, I think we need to analyze the real cases about API requests, right? Let's suppose that this is a API start, and then unit, 2 unit, and end. There's a 3 units, it ends, and then 3 units, it ends. But before it ends, there's another overlapping API request. This is what happened in real life. There's an API request, and then there might be some API that's not gonna return a response, and it generates timeout, right? Something like this. So when should we start? When should we start showing the progress bar? Right? Maybe we could start from here, but it's not good. We shouldn't show the progress bar right when the API start. When the API call is started, right? We only show the progress bar for the slow request. When it's too fast, it's not necessary to tell the users that okay, you're loading something, because it's just a one moment thing. The user see it and it ends. Should add some delays, right? Let's say we delay it for 2 units, at least 3 units. So this should not trigger a progress bar. So that reminds us there's a first step, a first spec. Only show progress for slow request. So and then we should if we set it the timeout to 2 unit, we should start showing the progress bar at here, right? And then it ends. So it ends, right? When it ends, we should set it to complete, right? We should not say okay, clear the timeout. We should say okay, it's complete. We should set it to 100%. Okay, so when all API are done, should set progress to full, right? And then 0, right? Then reset. Yeah, this is the natural flow and let's see what else. And then there's overlapping. Okay, overlapping should just should be considered. And timeout. When timeout when timeout, we don't actually, for this company, we don't care about timeout. We should expose APIs for other modules to call, to update, right? We don't have timeout here. Let's the other like API module to handle the timeout and the updates our this progress bar. So this is it. So, and this is our spec that we're gonna elaborate more. So we won't cover, well, the animation, the transition timing. That's a deep topic. I think the interactive designer should design that for us. So the transition timing, we don't care about that for now. And what? And yeah. Okay, that's it. We don't cover this. Okay, this is the scope how we're gonna implement, right? Another thing I think we should mention is that if there's a timeout, where should we stop, right? We should stop at full. They will at 100% like cover the whole progress. Then the user might think, okay, since the progress bar is at the end, why should it stop? So for in progress, 95% maximum. Okay, we don't cover the full width. Okay, so this is the basic stuff we're gonna do. Now there's some of the assumptions. Well, for this case, we will take into consideration about the API response time, right? So averagely, let's say averagely 100 milliseconds is API response time, right? Averagely. So this gives us the delay, like 150 milliseconds, right? Like say the first delay. Cool. And then what is it? Then timeout, right? The timeout, let's say it's 60 seconds. If timeout is 60 seconds for API module, then what it causes, it might, if there's a timeout API, we're gonna wait 60 seconds at 95%, right? Yeah. Doesn't matter that much, but it's related, so we take these assumptions. And now the big picture. So how can we implement this widget, this component? Well, there are two parts. One is UI, one is logic, right? Let's say for UI state, we use class names with transitions, right? Okay, so how many states are there? As we analyze, the first one is progress bar. There's no progress, right? So let's say it's idle. It's 0%. And then when API is called, we set it to, like say, loading, and it will be set to 95%. We say the transition with, what's the time? The time should be like, we say, averagely, then API should be fast enough. It should not be trigger any progress. And then we expect the progress to like stop at a quarter of the progress bar, let's say. So that give us what? A quarter, so 4 times about 5. Let's just give it a second. 1 second. Okay, and then they complete it, right? When it's done, we need to set it to 100%. So this will be handled by CS code, and good. This is the UI state, and then the logic state. When we are going to set complete, we need to make sure that there's no overlapping at all, right? All the API calls are done, so we need to keep track of the API calls, right? So ongoing calls, which is number, and the expose APIs, which say start load, end load, right? And then UI structure, we have UI state, we have a UI structure, which is DOM, which is container and bar. This is it. Okay, logic state, expose this API, This is a global picture. I think the interviewer will understand. It's pretty clear. Does this enough? Is this enough? Okay, we have a UI state. This UI state should be state sync with the UI structure, and it's okay. And logic state, okay, ongoing calls. We keep track of it and update the state, right? Yeah, that's it. And the key challenges. The key challenges would be what? Would be actually implementation, right? How could we separate the UI part and the logic? So it should be it should be targeted to state switching. How we should switch the state? Well, there are two actions actually, which is start load and end load, right? Let's just analyze the flow written here. One, start load is called. Then what it is? It might be there might be three, right? State. One, idle. We just set timer to loading. Loading. Oh, +1, right? +1 to the ongoing calls. Okay, if it is already loading, then just +1, right? If 3 is completed, then there's only one case, is that it's between the complete timer, right? As said here, then reset. There's a timer here, so complete reset clear timer to idle, and set to idle immediately, right? And start 1. You just continue set this compare this process, right? Yeah, that's it. And then what if there is a end load to this called? Well, there will be 3 cases, right? One is idle. There's only one case, is that between the timer to start, timer to loading. So we clear timer to loading. Don't forget -1. And if it's loading, we -1. If 0, it means all APIs are done. We set to completed, right? And set to completed, we need to add the delay to go to set to idle, but we don't handle it in here because we don't know when the animation actually will be done. And I think we should set add event listener to listen to transition end event to set completed to idle, right? And this is timer, right? Timer to idle. Okay. Yeah, this is the clear timer to idle. This is the timer. Okay. And then if it is already completed, that's impossible, right? Ignore. So this is it. This is a state switching. I think it's pretty clear, but it's not that easy to implement, I think. And then the last one is trade-off. There's any alternative to do? Well, I can think of one alternatives. If we don't use the import and export thing, we may use the custom event, right? Instead of export import, we could make the and we can make the progress bar fancier with animations thing. Yeah, cool. Better timing function. That's it. That's the whole design of this feature, progress bar. I think it's not that simple, right? Rather than writing some CSS code, yeah, it's much difficult than that. Okay, let's begin. Uh-oh. Where's the review? I'm sorry. The review is gone. Allow me to copy the code and get the review preview out. Okay, this is it. So what are we gonna do? We're gonna create a progress bar because this is the global progress bar. I use a progress here. I use a div as the bar. There's only one div, so I don't need to add class here. Okay, this is progress bar. Progress bar will be height with like 2 pixel. Like say 1 pixel. Like 4 pixel, okay, to make it clear. And then we don't need to set width here, but because the body use flex, okay, I set width. Let's add some background to make it clearer. Yeah, this is it. And then this is the bar. First, height should be occupying the whole height, and background. Let's say it's let's use some gradient, linear gradient to right, blue, light blue. Yeah, looks good. And let's say width is 0%. Right? Okay, and then we add, as we analyzed, we need just 3 state, right? Idle, loading, complete. So let's add these 3 state, which is idle, of course, 0%. And then loading, 95%, and the transition should be with 1 second, 90. I'll just use easing out. Cool. And if it is complete, progress bar div completed. Width should be 100%. Transition should be with 100 millisecond, ease in. Okay, so this is it. Let's try to see if we made it right. Okay, so let's okay, within this module, allow me to get the bar. It should be query selector. Progress bar. Div. Let's set timeout. A bar. Class name. Equals loading. Cool. You see? It's pretty good. Okay. Now let's start with our real implementation of the JavaScript. Okay, as we said, with US state we need to keep up these 3 state, and there of course there will be must be a current state, right? US structure is done, and we don't modify the we try to avoid modifying the DOM directly. Would better like use only one method to sync the state. to the UI, right? Let's create a, okay, let's say current state equals, okay, we need to define 3 state first. Our first one is idle. Let's say it's idle. And the next one is loading. Loading. Completed. Completed. Okay, default state would be idle, right? And then the render method. We'll just reflect the state to the class, so to the DOM, right? A bar class name equals current state. That's it. And then we need to modify the state, right? We only call this render in set state. We accept the state. We set it the current state to state, and then we render. That's it. So here, we could say set state. Okay. It should be loading, state, loading. Wait a minute. Set timeout. Yeah, see, it's pretty good. Okay. Now the UI state is done. Now we need to implement the state switching, right? We need to keep track of the ongoing calls also. Okay. This is test cases. Okay, let's set ongoing calls to 0, right? Let's create 2 methods. It's called start load. Actually export it here, but in leetCode export doesn't work. So I will just define this method locally. Okay. When we call it, we will handle this just according to our analyze here. We just check the state, right? Switch current state, case state idle, case state loading, case state what? Case state completed, right? So okay, so what happened when idle? When we start something, when it's idle, it means it's ready, idle, or there's a timer to go, right? So we need to check the timer. Okay. As we analyze, we need to create a timer to loading, and also there's a timer to idle, right? Yeah, when it's idle and there's no timer to loading, we create a new one, right? Then we set it. Set timer to set timeout. Set a state. State loading. Oh, and we need to define the time. It should be constant. Time to loading, it should be what? It should be 200. Okay, oh, so I'm sorry. As we analyze, we should be 150, 200. Yeah. And time to idle, set to 100. Okay, we set it. Set the time. We set the state, and don't forget to set it to null. This is it. If there's no timer, we just start it. And if there's already a timer, we do nothing, right? So, and don't forget to add the ongoing calls. +1. And a break. Cool. And then if this is already loading, we just add this, right? Break. If it's completed, while it's completed, there's only one case. That's within the timer of timer to idle, right? We just clear this. we clear timeout, timer to idle, to null, and what to do? We need to set to idle right away, right? State idle, and then we need to start the process here again. So I move it up, yeah, so that if it is complete, we can continue checking the timer node, right? Pretty good. Now let's start with the end load. It's the same. We switch on current state, case state idle, case state loading, case state completed. Okay, if it is idle, then there's only one case that it is when the timer, right? Yeah, so we just clear the timer. Clear the timeout, timer to unloading, and update the ongoing calls. Okay, I think with ongoing calls could be called here. One, and because the end load is called by another module, it might be some mistakes there. We don't want some negative counts, right? So we set the minimum to 0. This -1. We update the calls, and then if it is idle, then we need to clear the timer loading, and don't forget to set it to null. And okay, break. Nothing should be done. And loading, if it is loading, we update the ongoing calls. And if ongoing calls is 0, it means all the APIs are done. All the calls are done. We need to do what? We set stage to complete, right? That's it. And we do nothing. Then break. So we said it's completed. And actually, we need to add another timeout to set it to idle. That will be done as we analyzed. It should be done by the listener, right? Event listener. We add listener, transition end. If current state equals state completed, if it is completed, then we set timeout, right? Timer to idle, set timeout, set state. Okay, oh, this is not necessary. Set state idle, and this is to be time to idle. Cool. So that's it. And we just set it to completed. The idle will be handled by this event listener when the real transition is done. Oh, my mic is false. I'm sorry. Allow me some time to fix it. Shit. Excuse me for a moment. Oh, they fought. Shit. How can I do this? Oh. Okay. Wow. This is cheap. Cheap means bad quality. Okay. Sorry for that. Let's continue. When the complete and when the API calls are complete, and there is a loading end load, it means it should be happening, right? It should not happen. We just do nothing, so we break. Cool. So this is it. This is our whole implementation. Let's try to see if it works. The first one is we should not show progress bar for fast requests. Let's try. So this is start load, and if set timeout end load with 100. Oh, we show some progress bar. So there's a problem. Wait a minute. Yeah, it's wrong. We start and then we end, right? Okay, when we end, we update ongoing calls, and if it's idle, we clear timer to loading to null, and when it's idle, if timer to loading to null, we set timer to loading, set timeout, set it to, oh, I forgot the time to loading. Shit. Okay. Yeah, there's no loading. This is fast calls, no progress. Okay, let's test some slow one. Okay, we start load, and then we end it 4 milliseconds. Yeah, let's say make it clearer. So let's say 6, and then we set timeout. Start load, and then end load again. Set timeout 400. End load again. So this is a 2 non-connecting API calls, right? Let's see what happens. 1, 2. Yeah, that's good. This is 2 non-overlapping requests calls. And then the third example should be overlapping, right? Three overlapping. Okay, we first start load, and then start load again. 600. Okay, 300 milliseconds later, and then 100 milliseconds later we end load, and then 1 second later we end load. See what happens. And then, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, right. Pretty good, right? Ow, I feel good about this. Okay. So the last one should be the a timeout, right? This just a very timeout. The very slow request. What it would be, right? It would just be like 30 seconds later, and we end. End load. Let's see what happens. You should stop at 95%, right? Yeah. So actually, does this look good? I'm not sure. Maybe we can take it slowly, like here, and then keep it going, right? So actually, this should be something to do. I'd say here. Make some improvement on the 95%. Okay, fixed setting of 90% plus a 1 second transition. So this is something we could improve. This is maybe too fast for this case, but generally it should be good enough. Okay, so I finished this system design problem. Actually cost me 34 minutes, and I followed the steps I listed up in my previous video. Let's review it once more before we go away. The first one, understand what it is, right? There are many kinds of progress bar. We clarify it with the interviewer, and then we analyze a real example and define the scopes we want to handle. And we want to cover something, okay, list it up. So, and then there's some assumptions. It's basically about the time, API time, and the users. How many users are there, and how much time is tolerable. And then because it's a system design, we have a picture of the real implementation, right? The US state, the logic state, the exposable no the API exposed. And if it's a product design, it might be something different. It's like how how the data flows from user input to the database for the API and go back, and then there's pages and the page redirections, anything. So that would be suitable for a diagram. So, but for this one, simple one, I'll just list it up in an outline. Okay, so this is a pretty straightforward. And the 5 key challenges. What should we be focusing on? Well, as we analyzed, the core part about this progress bar is about the state switching, right? How we can switch state. There will be 3 states: idle, loading, completed, and some logic, start load and end load. How we can handle the state. We listed logic up, and it looks good. And here, listen to the transition end is a tip. And at last, after we implement it or before we implement it, we can see at least some trade-off alternatives, right? One thing is that we use import and export. Maybe we could use custom event instead of it, right? The direct import, maybe it's not good, or we can just encapsulate this bar into shadow DOM. So it may be kept away from being affected by CSS styles. And then we could make the progress bar more fancy. Our implementation is look like very naive. This linear gradient looks good. And then we could improve on the fixed setting of 95% because we already see that for the timeout case, this doesn't look good, right? We just go to 95% and stop there. It's to our users is something that nothing's working. And I suppose that we refine sets the speed dynamically based on the API condition, and add some animation, like make it fancier so the users will feel more like heart beating and less less boring. Yeah. Okay, so that's all for this video. I hope it helps, and I already followed the steps in my previous video, so I believe that it helped myself a lot. So from now on, whenever I am asked about to implement something, I will follow these steps to clarify things out and find the shining point of myself. Finding the core logic and to appeal myself to the interviewer. Yeah, cool. That's it. Hope it helps. See you next time. Bye bye.